Where are we? That's geology.
I'm turning it into. That's okay. I do it. It was on. Yeah, you can turn it and then it's put that on. Yeah, I was like, why? Oh, right.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Stuart.
Hi, Stuart.
Hey, where are you at, Ryan?
I'm at my girlfriend's house
New Jersey?
in New Jersey, back in New Jersey.
Good.
So road trip is over. We made it.
Yeah. Are you quarantining and all that?
Sure.
No. No, biological science is above and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just me and our families. I'm not seeing any friends right now.
Well, you wouldn't want to get them sick, would you?
No. So I'm still being careful.
Good.
So,
This was quite the movie, Prometheus, right?
oh
You
yeah,
can
it was
overlook
exciting.
the alien stuff. I don't know if you want to talk about the science of alien, but if not, we can move on and
Well, it's
talk about
it's
Yeah,
from
whatever
the
you guys feel
Alien
like.
movie. It's like he deja vu'd himself.
There we go.
I have to say that I really like the music, especially the theme they had. Anytime this Prometheus would come up, it was a very pretty, just small little theme music, but it was.
I liked it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it too.
And it's also, I don't know if this was like intentional or like had to do something with it, but like Prometheus was the Greek god of fire. And, typically if, let's say you visit an art museum, you see these Greek gods and even like normal people sculpted into marble. And it's funny, like this Prometheus guy looks like a living marble sculpture. He's even got like this like white tarnished skin, and it looks like he's like solid, like made out of rock. I thought
And that might have
really
been the intent to do that, to
yeah.
carry that effect.
In my spare time, I looked at like how they did the makeup, like the makeup artists who made like the Prometheus character, and it's really exciting. Like the skills they have to make a person look.
We
like
hear a
this.
lot of background noise. Is that on your people talking?
That's on my end. Yeah.
Okay. Because if you're recording it,
Right. But yeah, so first thing I try to advance the slide here. Okay, first thing I want to address is like the very beginning of the movie. Prometheus is put onto the earth to start spawning life, and so I want to look at how did life on Earth really begin. And doing some research, a lot of scientists believe that it began in the ocean. In the ocean, you had these eukaryotes or prokaryotes, these unicellular organisms that were able to replicate DNA. And I think DNA replication is the foundation on which we can base all more complex life forms on.
it's there was this old line, which is, it's easier to I kind of forgot it, but it's easier to explain how we got from protoplasm to professor than it is from protein to protoplasm.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And DNA is part of, that's the real key.
Yeah. Yeah. So once you have a being that could be described as a living thing, it's really, I guess, easy to draw the connection between that organism and a much more complex organism. So protoplasm to professor. But going from nothing at all to everything is inanimate to something that is a living thing is a crazy leap. And, you know, this is one of the huge questions, obviously, that astronomers have is, you know, are we ever going to find
the Drake equation, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to find any form of life, regardless of its complexity, outside of our planet.
How about that meteor that just landed in England a few weeks ago that had all of these complex organic compounds? What do you know about that?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I actually I haven't heard of the meteor impact, but I can kind of draw a connection between that and other discoveries we've made. We're like, oh, these are the building blocks of life. You know, could it be connected to, you know, extraterrestrial beings? And the first example that comes to mind is when we found, I think it was phosphine gas in the Venusian atmosphere. So they had a probe, they were doing like spectroscopy on the cloud tops of Venus. And we're like, oh, there's this phosphine gas that's being emitted. You know, that's like a signature for life. And I think Sam and I had talked about it on one of our Stargazing podcasts. I think that's on YouTube. And I had said, like, you know, maybe it could be considered living. Even if it's just a simple protein, we might as well classify that as life. Because, as you'll see in the next bullet point, we don't really have a rigid definition for what a living thing is. So, Deborah, would you think, like, if we just found, you know, some organic proteins on...
No, don't use the word protein. Protein is something very specific. Protein is a set of amino acids that are linked together chemically. All right. So don't use it loosely. But
Okay,
what was found on this meteor, it streaked, it was like 2 weeks ago. It was a big deal. It streaked across the sky in Herefordshire or something in England and was found within a few days. The fragments were found on the ground, which was a big deal, handled with gloves so that it would not be contaminated by surroundings. And it was found to have, when I say organic, I mean carbon bonded molecules, not just on the surface, I gather.
Okay. So it wasn't proteins specifically, it was some other molecule?
No, protein. Yeah, there's lots of carbon molecules that are not proteins.
Okay, I got you.
Protein. Okay.
Yeah, that's my mistake. As you can see, I'm not very well versed in chemistry or biology.
Well, you're talking to, you know, two or three doctors given the evening who have some knowledge of biochemistry and biology. So
yeah, I'm very glad you're sharing your expertise.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Yeah, you're enlightening me.
But still, it's real. To me, it's interesting. How would there be organic compounds? So it's not just carbon, it's carbon plus. And they didn't say in the things I read, you know, on this meteor that they took to be very significant.
Okay.
And not contaminants.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, do you have a fine line between what is considered living and what is considered not living?
I would,
from your own background?
from my, I don't know what the official doctrine is, but to me, life is something that can reproduce.
Okay.
And so that involves DNA sometimes. And, like, for example, viruses are debatable whether they are alive because they parasitize the reproductive structures inside a cell. So viruses cannot reproduce by themselves. They have to invade a cell and use the proteins, the enzymes, and the replicating machinery, which is all protein or of a cell. It's not all protein. Like DNA is not protein. It's not made of amino acids. RNA, same, but not, so. But to me, something that replicates independently.
I want to ask you, Stuart, what was your take on the black goo that Prometheus had drunk, like in order to sacrifice himself in order to create life on Earth?
Well, you're ahead of me on that. I've always puzzled by that first scene, trying to understand
Yeah.
what that meant. So, you've already gone farther than I've ever gone. Your feeling was that he drank that, whatever it was.
It looked like little cells.
But that he did that to create life on Earth, because it looked like whatever it was, the implication for the next scene was that it was breaking up his DNA. I don't know. I guess the question is, did he know that by drinking this, he was going to die? Is the first question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Your feeling was he drank it to create life. So I create life on Earth. I guess that's an interesting thing. I guess the question then is, did he do it intentionally, to create life?
Sure, yeah.
But was he expecting a different result? Was he expecting a different result from drinking that, whatever he drank?
Yeah. And I had done a little research on the mythological background. And according to the myths, Prometheus had stolen fire from Zeus and gave it to humanity so that they could survive. But as a consequence, Prometheus was punished and he had his liver eaten away by
An eagle.
An eagle, that's right. An eagle came to eat his liver.
It was chained.
They even said that in the movie. They said that in the movie, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that was even in the beginning.
Yeah. It was chained to a mountain in the Caucasus, as it turns out.
That's right.
That the eagle would, somewhere on this computer, I probably have a picture of that mountain. Every day, the eagle would come and eat his liver, and then it would grow back, which livers do, which is interesting that they knew that then.
Before we leave definitions of life, I just went to Wikipedia,
Yeah.
and it said as many as 123 definitions of life have been compiled.
Wow.
One definition seems to be favored by NASA: a self-sustaining chemical system capable of Darwinian evolution. More simply, life is matter that can reproduce itself and evolve as survival dictates.
Okay, so that has a component of evolution in it, which I wouldn't
Yeah.
have considered at all.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
I wouldn't have. Well, I didn't. I don't. I don't know.
And the final point I wanted to make with life is we can break cells down further into atoms, and then atoms into subatomic particles. And when you think about it, everything in the universe, living or non-living, is just made up of quarks and leptons.
Physics
And
first.
physics first, yeah. And you say, like, what is governing those particles to behave in the way they do? Right? You have the four fundamental forces. Gravity is pretty negligible when you get down to that scale. So you have like E and M, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. And you just have three forces, two bits of matter, quarks and leptons, and you just let it do its thing. And really just by entropy, we can have sentient beings. We can even have beings that can reason, like us humans.
So actually, I have another definition of life,
Go ahead.
that it's the opposite of entropy.
Opposite of entropy.
Yeah.
I wonder, because like, you know, one of the laws of thermodynamics says that entropy must always increase.
I mean,
It-
eventually we do.
Right. And it must never decrease. That's more precisely, entropy must never decrease. The overall entropy of the entire universe.
Right.
And it's like, would just procreation ever catch up to natural disorder? If we just like kept creating life as many
Look at
times as possible.
Congress.
What was that?
Look at Congress.
Look at Congress. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like life can just come about from little bits of matter interacting with each other.
Well, I
It was
agree
like-
with you. The idea that on one level, this is with just a bunch of, you know, all that's going on here is quarks and electrons and leptons, and on the other hand, we got consciousness, and how you get from one end to the other is
But well,
magic.
is there-
Magic.
Magic. I like that. Magic.
Is there anything with all those quarks and leptons that ends up as organized as life, as anti-entropic as life?
Yeah. You know, is there another process where I can't even think of any? It's really the most profound thing. You could say like, all right, stars, how do they come into existence? But it's really not that,
It's all
it's not
physics.
as complicated. It's not as complicated because it's just gravity interacting on massive particles and crushing them into a sphere.
Yeah.
So life is ridiculous. It's extraordinarily complex how you can just get that from, you know, the tiny building blocks of the universe.
You know, there's this guy, Walter Isaacson, just, you know, he's the guy that's written all these biographies. He used to be editor of Time magazine, and he just wrote one on, you know, the people that did the CRISPR. They got the, you know, Jennifer Dowda, they got the Nobel Prize for CRISPR. Do you know what CRISPR is, Ryan?
No, I don't think I've heard.
It's gene editing. It's a technique
Gene editing. Oh, I see.
of using bacteria and of using what bacteria did with viruses to protect themselves from viruses. And we were able to figure that out, and it's led to a whole new revolution. Yeah,
Well, that looks like a really cool book.
yeah. But anyway, he started the book. You reminded of it when you said atoms, you know, we were talking about. So he said, one way of thinking of human history over the last, from 1900 to 1950, 1950 to 2000, 2000 to 2050. The first of that was the atom. The second, 1950 to 2000, was the bit. And now it's the bit computer. And now we're into the gene. You know, that kind of narrowed it down nicely, I thought.
I like that pattern. Yeah. And then speaking of DNA, we go back to the scene in the movie where they recover this helmet that they put onto a stand, and then they uncover the helmet and they say, oh, it's a head. It's a head of one of the engineers probably. And they wanted to run a test and see how similar its DNA was to that of humans. And what was your reaction when they found a match, the sample versus a human?
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, I was blown away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Leading up to it.
let's let the cat out of the bag. How do you understand the overall picture? You know, and I don't think the storyline ever was made clear. You know, since at the end, you know, she's off to find, you know, the origin of Prometheus.
Right.
But the relationship of Prometheus and them to us on Earth is not at all clear. I guess they implied in the movie that it was pretty clear that they were taking off to come to Earth to unleash the aliens to destroy all of us because they didn't like us or something, and they were going to redo us. I mean, that was kind of at least one hypothesis they came up with. But how did you put together the overall storyline of what they were doing with all this?
It was, to be honest, just as confusing to me, but it
Good.
had me thinking, yeah,
Because I mean, I would say I didn't get it.
Mhm.
it was, yeah, really
Go.
difficult to follow. But what
Yeah.
it had me thinking, I was like, does Prometheus have a creator?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, you know, the end of the movie tries to answer that question, but we never get to see what happens. So
Well, there
it
is a
makes-
sequel, and I think maybe they
Oh.
follow it up. There is a sequel that was, I
Okay.
think that was made.
Interesting.
Was it made, Stuart?
I thought, I don't know. I mean, I thought there was a sequel with Elizabeth Shaw, you know, the scientist, and yeah, see if something comes up. Alien
Alien Covenant.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what it says.
2017. Yeah. So 5 years later, they did make a sequel. Oh,
Yeah,
that
let's
should
do it.
be one of our next movies.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, so it had me thinking, is like, does Prometheus have a creator? And if so, how did something create Prometheus? And then you get to this like sort of inception thought. It's like whoever created Prometheus had to have a creator, had to have a creator, and you like have this gigantic nutshell.
Yeah, that's like when people say, well, there's God that did the beginning, but then the next question is who created God? If you keep doing that.
Yeah, turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Is the answer. So the other thought that I had when they matched the DNA was this fun fact that I remember is that humans share 60% of their DNA with bananas
Mhm.
and 96 of it with chimpanzees.
The bananas is really interesting.
And I think there may be like a calculator somewhere where you can like plug in any organism and it will show you the percent similarity to humans.
Mhm.
Here, look, with lettuce, with mushrooms, with dogs, with pigs. We're more closely related to mice than we are to pigs.
Mhm.
And you know, I wonder if when they do the FDA food stuff, the tests on the rats, that comes into consideration. I wanted to play this quick video by Vsauce. The title is "We're All Related." And so if we share 96% of our DNA with chimpanzees, imagine how close you are genetically to a stranger that you walk into on the street. And so here's a good perspective on all of humanity.
Can't hear it.
Still can you hear it? Silent?
No.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Let's try that again. Might be able to download it. Let's see. I'm glad I have this handy converter. Whoops, that's not it. So MP4. Are you able to see like the tabs that I'm going through as I click?
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why the YouTube link doesn't load. But all good, I have it right here. So let's open this. Okay, and now I should be able to share this window. There we go. All right, you guys see it now?
Yeah, let's see if we
See
hear
it.
it. No. Can't hear it again.
You know, Ryan, do you have a way of putting on captions that we can read
Oh,
it?
yes. Yeah, let me do that instead. Okay. Okay, go back to here. Yeah, here's closed captioning.
See the captions.
Six degrees of separation. And then there's that sperm donor guy who has at least 200 children that don't even know that they're half brothers and sisters.
So we are just made up of little particles, and they come in and they go out. It's quite strange to think that we're anything but temporary. Yeah, and that goes for every living thing, not just humans. So, you know, the trees outside, they're not made up of the same root fibers and leaves as they were 10 years ago, probably. You know, they also are made up of cells, and they exchange molecules and atoms. And so everything is just flying around the earth. I think it's said that everybody on earth probably shares maybe 1,000 or so atoms that belong to Shakespeare.
Oh. Now that would be cool.
Yeah. You know, and they're pretty hardy. You know, protons, electrons, they don't really go away, they don't decay. So the very same atoms that made up dinosaurs are probably still here today, you know, roaming around in the grass or in the air or in your food.
Or in your dog. So,
And you know,
go
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask for a total tangent question.
Yeah.
There's been a hullabaloo about a new, is it particle or force that was discovered at the Large Hadron Collider a couple of weeks ago, and Fermilab was announced today.
Fermilab, yeah, I remember the live streaming they had today at Fermilab. The muon.
Yeah, it's a muon thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were just like releasing all the muon G2. They were releasing the results from the first experiment. It was like a Zoom call. Let me read the description.
So this is a YouTube thing?
Yeah, the Zoom meeting, which was like a group of over 100 scientists and professors, were all gathered to discuss the new discovery or the new experiment. I'm totally unfamiliar with this, to be honest.
Okay.
I studied a little bit of particle physics in graduate school, but we never like touched cutting edge research. We didn't really learn what was going on at the LHC or Fermilab. You know, we learned the basics.
Yeah.
We learned about like the standard model and how we can create new particles. But when I
Yeah.
a bit of this YouTube video, it was way over my head.
Well, then I'm in good company.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the bits I heard I couldn't understand, so okay, good. All right, but anyway, so we were back to your thoughts on the movie.
Yeah. So like when Prometheus is spawning life, you know, it had to come from somewhere. And in this case, it came from, you know, his own body, the reaction that was made with his body and the black goo that he had drunk. But you think about like real life, how life came about on Earth, it came from the very planet. Nothing was brought to the planet. Humans didn't come from some faraway place. that little bacteria came from the seafloor. It came from something, some organic material in the seafloor. And then those organisms crawled out onto land. And those land animals, you know, ate whatever was there. They grew to be bigger, faster, and stronger. And then, so it goes, we have apes, dinosaurs, and humans. We're just vehicles for organic matter. Water, air, and food come in, and that's what literally becomes us. A really good question that was posed to college students. And I learned this in my pedagogy class when we're learning about education techniques, is they asked Harvard graduates, where does a tree get its mass from? You know, you start with a little sapling, a seed even, and it turns into just a little tiny plant. How do you get these gigantic oak trees, these redwoods? Where does all that mass come from? And Harvard graduates were saying, oh, it must come from like the soil. But if you do an experiment and you just like plant a small plant in a pot, you can take the weight of the soil in the pot from when it's very young to when it's a fully grown plant, and it doesn't change. The misconception was that it really comes from the air, photosynthesis. And all these Harvard graduates had learned about photosynthesis. They know exactly the process, they can name everything, but they didn't grasp the concept that carbon dioxide is literally what's giving trees their structure, their whole body. The wooden trunk and the green leaves come from carbon dioxide. And that's the photosynthesis cycle. It was kind of interesting. And when I was asked this question, I had no idea. I would have guessed like the soil or something, but turns out it's just the air. Trees get all of that mass from the carbon dioxide that they take in.
I wouldn't have gotten that either.
Nor I. I would have thought about nutrients in the soil too. Yeah.
So we learned that in the end of the movie, humanity is trying to be erased. So Prometheus brought about humanity, brought about life on Earth, and then it's learned later in the movie that they're going to be extinguished.
Yes, the squid-like, alien monster things.
Yeah.
Were these the controlling life forces on that planet or on ours? I mean, what are they about in the plot?
Yeah. So supposedly they can spawn inside of a human, and so that's what happened to Shaw, right?
Right.
She pretty much like gave birth to this squid thing. And it may be like a parasite thing where it's inert by itself, but once it can find a host, it can spawn into this gigantic squid thing. And I think, I'm not quite certain about this, but I think it's related to like the black goo that Prometheus had drunk in the very beginning.
Yeah. Do you think that they were meant to be sort of the sentient controlling factor, controlling Prometheus, controlling humans or life, Earth
Well,
life?
I thought the way the plot was is that those were basically the Prometheus, the engineers WMD, and it got out of those containers, you know, and ended up killing them there on that planet. But they were planning to take the alien life to Earth to destroy all of Earth with their.
Yeah.
So the alien life was their WMD. They were using it to extinguish life on Earth. And Ryan is saying that somehow it's related to how they supposedly in the storyline started life on Earth as well, but that part is not clear to me.
Yeah, and I don't know, it maybe speaks to the romantic cycle of life, that whatever comes into existence must also come out. You know, we have the birth of the sun is also going to die. We have the formation of Earth. One day Earth will cease to be. And we see that because in 5 billion years, the sun will expand as it starts dying and take the Earth with it. Mercury and Venus and Earth will be swallowed up by the dying sun. And the sun, although it will be a tiny white dwarf, will, over the course of many more billions of years, fizzle out. And, you know, the rest of the planets, they won't have a host star anymore. Yeah, so the white
What
dwarf.
comes of them?
What comes to the planets?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's as dramatic as just the sun disappearing and they fly off tangent to their orbit, because the sun will continue to lose mass as it radiates away energy in its white dwarf state. So I imagine the gravitational pull of the white dwarf sun will get weaker and weaker until there is no more. And the planets may start doing wider and wider orbits until they fly off into oblivion.
Hmm.
And it's suspected that these rogue planets exist elsewhere in the universe, but we can't see them because there's no light reflecting off of them and they don't give off their own light. So there may really be planets without a host star, you know, orphan planets just flying out in the middle of space, undetectable.
Hmm.
But, you know, that's the story for just our solar system. We want to focus on end of humanity. Just about every single organism that has ever existed has gone extinct. 99.9% of all life that ever was on Earth is no more. We don't have dinosaurs. We don't have these megalodon sharks. We don't have these snake-like fish that used to roam around in the Precambrian era.
Right. We don't have mastodons. We don't have Neanderthals.
Yeah. So all of them had to vanish at one point or another, and usually it was the result of a mass extinction. Could we expect the same thing for us? Humans probably won't make it 5 billion more years. If we do, that would be remarkable. But I think going along with the history of everything else, every other living thing, humans are bound to vanish at one point. And I'd like to explore, like, what could possibly eradicate humans? You know, here in the background image, I have a meteor impact. So if we do encounter one of these, that's definitely it for us. We won't, I don't think we're coming out of that alive. If a 10-kilometer asteroid smacks into the Earth, probably most living things will be dead. But there's other things. Wars. If we have nuclear wars, then the ultimate price is no more humans. It's kind of a morbid thought, but it is kind of the end of the movie. The Prometheus, the engineers planned to destroy all of humanity. And the very end is like their search to find out why. But if not for a cataclysmic cosmic event like an asteroid impact, we could wipe ourselves out with nuclear weapons, even accidentally. I read or I listened to somewhere that it's more likely for the accidental detonation of a nuclear warhead than it is for any one of you to die in a commercial airline crash. It's more likely to, whoops, that's the wrong button, launch all the nukes, than an airplane crash. And that was really shocking. I could not believe it. But apparently that's true. Accidental detonation is a real big risk and issue.
Yeah, I mean, this is referred to as existential threats to humanity, is the current lingo for that, what you're talking about.
Yeah. So one more Vsauce video. He makes some really great content. Has a title, Human Extinction. How are we going to vanish? Yeah, we discussed the Fermi paradox, which is if there's such a great likelihood that extraterrestrial beings exist in our own galaxy, why haven't we heard from them yet? But also, like, I think a really good solution to that is there's only been so much time we could be able to receive a message. But anyway, that's a totally different topic. What I wanted
Well,
you to
that's actually very interesting, that whole thing, and I'd like to do it again. But I've heard this whole argument before, and one of the people in the paper that he showed us was this guy Nick Bostrom. He was the author. Nick Bostrom happens to be one of the philosophers that's in this this place called the Institute for the Future of Humanity. I think it's a think tank built from funds from like Oxford University and some of the Scandinavian universities. And one of the other guys in that think tank just put a book out a year or two ago. I think the name of the book was Precipice. And basically the whole book was on the future of humanity in terms of these existential threats. I think you could find it if you look for it real quick when you're.
Yeah, what was the name?
Precipice.
Yes.
Precipice. Precipice book. I guess book.
Yes.
By Toby Ord.
Yeah.
That's the book. And I've read bits and pieces of it. It's really worth, it's the same thing that he was talking about.
Yeah, definitely. I like that.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then I had read a book 20 years ago by this I think he was an anthropologist or called, the name of the book was Future Evolution. I think it was Peter Ward. And even though it was 20 years ago, I almost remember the whole book. Peter Ward. Yeah, that's it. That's a very powerful book. And basically what he says is, let's talk about the next billion years. And what are the chances of being killed by an asteroid? Maybe one every 100,000 years, one every 100 million years. A species killing asteroid. So that's 10 in the next billion years. But he didn't think that was going to get us. But what year did it come out? It was 20 years old now. But I don't think anything in it is different now. It was very well done, that book.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's important to distinguish humans today versus what humans will be like in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million years into the future. Only 50,000 years ago, humans were way different than we are today. I think most profoundly is their diet. What were people eating 50,000 years ago? Raw plants. Well, maybe as long as it was before cooking, I may have my timeline off. But let's say humans before the advent of cooking had much different facial features than we do today, because we have the ability now to eat not only cooked food, but processed food, soft food. And this is a book I read called Breath by James Nestor. It says that early humans had much longer jaws and much wider nostrils and a whole differently shaped cranium, because they had to chew on fibrous plants and animals too for hours at a time, because cooking had not been invented yet. And so they have these extremely pronounced and muscular jaws, which are a lot different than the jaws we would find on humans today.
I'm going to go. I'm turning into a pumpkin. Let me know the movie for next week when you get
Yeah.
there.
All right, we'll do.
Take care.
All right, see you, Stuart.
Do you have any thoughts on the movie, or you'll let us know?
I think he's gone. Yeah, well, for me, like, according to the movie, I think that their quest to find out why they wanted to eradicate humans is still something I'm wondering about. I don't really have an answer to it, but hopefully, I think we will watch the sequel to this movie next week. I think that would be really, really interesting.
So that's Aliens. What was it? It's not Covenant.
I think it was actually. Hold on.
Mhm.
Alien Covenant.
Covenant.
Yeah, let's do that for next week.
Okay. Okay. And there's actually there's a YouTube of Prometheus Explained.
There is. I did watch that as well.
Yeah, I that passed in front of my eyes here, so I'm going to take a look at that. Yeah. You know, I started the day actually with a geology Zoom, and one of the reasons for some of the mass extinctions in the past were volcanoes, and I wonder, has the Earth evolved geologically, or are we still capable of having a mass extinction type volcanic eruption?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Yellowstone can definitely erupt and wipe out most of the continental US, if not the rest of the world. Yeah, I would imagine that would throw up so much ash and debris and block out the sun, to create global havoc. That's totally possible. Yellowstone is a super volcano.
Yeah.
I think there are several more around the planet that.
Yeah, there are a number of hotspots. What's going on? I'm losing the audio, is what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have my microphone plugged in, but I still see my thing going up and down.
Oh, well, anyway, so okay, so whatever next week is.
Wednesday at 6, we'll do Alien Covenant.
Okay. All right. Are you going to email Stuart that?
Yes, I'll let him know.
Okay. Okay. There is it's a TV series. It's not a single movie, of Childhood's End, which was that book. Was it Arthur C. Clarke? About how humanity was evolving into something in a way more cerebral. That was the evolutionary gist of it. But it's a whole series of TV, episodes that you'd have to see.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well,
All right, take care, Deborah. I'll see you
Thanks.
next week.
yes, indeed. Thanks. Have a good one. Stay safe. Stay the people around you safe. And don't go to Florida for a while. Okay. Bye.